Go.
Good morning, Breakfast with Bacon. I am Dr. Christine Bacon, and I'm so excited to bring you today's show. My guest is Joseph Sciambra. I was corrected. I was calling him Sciambra, but it's Sciambra. I went to Italy. I spoke Italian. That's an Italian name, isn't it, Joseph?
Yeah, Sicilian.
Sicilian.
Yeah.
Siciliano. Do you
Yes.
speak any Italian?
Very little.
Well, you should go there and learn it. It was fantastic. I lived there for 2 years.
Oh,
Oh,
boy,
my
you're
gosh.
blessed.
Oh my gosh, total blessings. But so you corrected me on the name, and Joseph's got quite the story, and I think everyone needs to hear his story. We pray before we go live on any show, and we always we asked the Lord that whoever should be listening to the show is here, whoever shouldn't isn't, and it's sensitive subject matter based on if you've seen the history, the life, is this the right way to phrase it, Joseph? The lifestyle that you used to lead, or, it's not who you are, because I don't define you that way. But sensitive subject matter. So if you think your kids shouldn't be watching this right now, we're letting you know. So that being said, Joseph, I asked you before we went on the air how I could introduce you. I said, you're speaker. You said, not really, which, okay, you're a radio guest, because I've seen you on lots of radio shows. Your story is one of a complete conversion. You used to be an actor in gay porn movies, correct?
Yeah.
And now you're a Catholic missionary. Your mission field is
San Francisco.
Yeah. So welcome. And I just want to go right into the beginning. I have to thank you because, my regular guests, my listeners, my viewers know my story. I got married in 83 after being pregnant when I got married. Then I ended up leaving my husband for an affair. I was with another man, and it was my dark years. And people say to me, I can't believe you share that, but thank you for sharing that, because you've given my marriage hope. Because after 4 years apart, my husband and I reconciled, and now we just celebrated last Monday our 37th wedding anniversary. And by the grace of God, it is a happy marriage, and he's redeemed me. And so your story, though it had that dark place, has been redeemed as well. So let's just go right to the beginning. Take us to what preceded you. You didn't wake up saying, I want to be a gay porn star. So where was Joseph's life that got you there?
How far back do you want to go?
Wherever you feel it's relevant. Did you have a good childhood, bad childhood? Did you?
It was okay.
So
it was okay.
Take
it
me
wasn't,
to where you felt, yeah.
Sure. It wasn't perfect. But I had what you'd say a classic gay boy syndrome,
Right.
or the child of a pre-homosexual boy. Not a real close relationship with my dad, really through no fault of his own. We were pretty different.
Okay. Did your parents live together? Did you have a nuclear family?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my dad passed away in 2017. Yes, but they were married right up till he died. And my mother's still with us, thank God. And rather alienated from boys at school. Was not sporty, tended to be more artistic, was physically awkward, clumsy. I just didn't have any male, role models, at least healthy ones, that I can remember in my childhood. Got exposed to pornography.
Well, before you get that,
very young.
Before you talk about the pornography, tell me why you feel like your dad wasn't a healthy male role model. God rest his soul. Don't have to say anything that you feel would. But was he more the machismo dad? Was he the I want a son who does sports and you don't do sports, so I reject you?
I probably misspoke. I would say he was he was a good provider. He wasn't abusive, but he was distant.
Yeah.
Probably at times quite critical. So, your dad, you don't really look at it as a role model. It's your dad.
Okay.
So
he wasn't a bad dad. He just didn't connect with you in that.
Actually, my dad later on, if you want to talk about it, was very instrumental in me leaving the lifestyle.
The lifestyle.
Yeah. But I mean, in terms of role models, I mean, like coaches, teachers. I mean, growing up in Catholic school for 12 years, there was never a male teacher in my life. So
Wow. Okay.
I just didn't have any. And I
Okay.
mean, for a lot of boys, I think that comes through sports. But if you're not involved with sports,
Right.
you're not good at it, which I wasn't. And um, I did glom on to a certain priest, and that's a different story later on, who abused me. But yeah, just was alienated from
Okay.
boys. Had a few male friends, but then as I got older, which is a story with a lot of gay guys, is I gravitated towards girls
Hmm.
and hanging out with them.
With as
Not
friendships.
Oh yeah, not being attracted to them, but
Hmm.
just we were interested in a lot of the same things.
Right.
We had like we liked the same actors and musicians and things like that.
Right. Right.
Uh,
But
it
that's
was
not
just
a bad thing. But there's not a lot of masculine role models out there. And with society and our current culture trying to say masculinity is toxic, I do marriage coaching. I mean, men don't know what it means to be a man because feminism has just painted, you know, just tainted actually all of men and women's roles. And men are like, am I not supposed to speak up? Am I supposed to show my feelings? What, and it's like, well, God made men men and women women, but
yeah.
it doesn't mean a good masculine man doesn't have feelings, isn't tender. I mean, most women would want a man who's also tender. But I see what you're saying in terms of no one taught you what it was like to be a man, or that it was okay to like art and be a man, to have a tender heart and be a man, you know?
Yeah. Now there were two I had, and I read about this in my book. There were sort of two failed attempts that I had where I think good men tried to mentor me. There was a priest at my parish, an Irish priest, and uh, well, I considered him quite old at the time, but he was probably in his late 40s.
Younger
You
than
know,
me.
okay, yeah, I know. Now I'm like, wow, he wasn't that old. Um, but I was a kid. I was like, 12 years old. So he was very good. He was a quite um, had a quite military kind of bearing, but quite kind, quite compassionate, but very strict and very disciplined. So I should say at that time the altar servers were only boys. So I mean, he ran that group of guys, me included, like a little Marines, like we were little Marines. I mean, you
But you
didn't dare.
liked that, you said? You did
I
like that?
did, yeah, and you
Yeah.
didn't dare show up to mass 2 minutes late, 3 minutes late. I mean,
Or
if
with the
you,
wrong shoes on.
oh gosh, no. I mean, if you knew you were going to be late, you just didn't show up. There was no scurrying, up, into the sacristy.
Hmm.
So that was quite good. And actually, for that very short period of time when I was an altar boy, I could see things started to flip a bit with my relationship with other boys. I think I was perceiving them differently. They were perceiving me differently
In
because
a
there
good
was no,
way?
yeah, there was no
Okay, good.
teasing or harassment under this priest. He just didn't tolerate anything
Good.
like that. So it was a good environment. Whereas I think out on the play yard during recess, I mean, it's kind of every man for
Survival,
himself.
right.
Yeah,
Survival of the fittest.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that worked out, but then that was a period of time in the 80s where things were changing, and they weren't quite bringing in the altar girls, although that was next. But then there was a lot more female Eucharist ministers, and slowly the boys just all dropped out, and we quit. And he left and went to another parish, and then the new priest came in, was much more progressive. So that was over. And then there was a priest in the eighth grade, or excuse me, a lay male teacher in the eighth grade, and I had waited for years to be in his class because he was just a kind guy. And I guess at that time I did see him as old. He was probably in his mid 40s.
Right.
Yeah.
And it makes me laugh.
And then I finally got into his class. I think he recognized in me a bit of a lost soul, that I was struggling. I mean, who couldn't, see it?
Yeah.
So I think he did try to take me under his wing a bit and mentor me. And things started to change for me. But then he got ill, probably within a month of the school year, and he had to retire.
Aww.
Brought in a female teacher who was quite severe. And then I think it was over for me at that point. I think those were the two chances that if I wasn't going to go the gay route, homosexual route, those were the two.
And I'm going to talk about that root that you say, you know, and that's going to be a second line of questions, because a lot of people say you're born gay or you have to be, and I'm either just going to repress it, but let's hold off on that and address that later. But I want to ask you, you mentioned the sexual abuse. About what age were you? Was it just one priest? And when was pornography introduced? Because that, I think that's important for the timeline.
Oh, much younger. I was about 11 years old when I started. Yeah, when I first started seeing porn.
Okay.
And then.
And you're how old today?
Oh, I'm 50.
You're 50. So we're still talking about the 70s.
Oh, wait, what? Oh, yeah, it wasn't the internet. It was like Playboy.
Okay.
Yeah. But I had an older brother, so. But I mean, all little boys.
Right.
We all had. I don't know how we used to steal them. You know, we would go to like the liquor store or 7-Eleven or something that sold Playboy or Penthouse or Hustler and stole them, and we just had them. So
you're about 11. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No. Yeah, kids are pretty. We could figure things out, you know. And you know, we all had those magazines. So.
What about you said a priest molested you? I hadn't been aware of that before we went on the air.
Yeah, that was at 16.
So you're in high school. Is it Catholic high school as well?
Yeah.
I mean, how did that affect your faith? Let's even getting off the pornography. Here I am, a young man looking for leadership, and I'm at a Catholic school where he should be my spiritual leader, and yet he's doing bad things.
He wasn't at the school, although I did go to Catholic school. He was at the parish. And I think, even though, I guess at that age, I kind of considered myself rather savvy about sexual things, but it was all through porn. But I think I was always I think I'm still that way too, kind of a naive and trusting person. And certainly really, really starved for male affection and male affirmation. And I'm not blaming victims, but predators can figure that out. I mean, they know who's an easy target. Yeah, they know who's an easy target. And I guess I was.
Yeah. So kind of take us then to when did you suspect that you had same-sex attraction? And then go to that question I kind of touched on earlier. Do you believe you and or others are born gay? Or do you think, because every time I talk to someone who's in the kind of situation you're in, there's always these situations with, I felt less of a man, I felt different, someone led me on this path and I figured I must be gay. Can you tell us that? So that's kind of two questions. How did you come upon thinking I must be gay? And then the other one is, do you think people are born gay? So that's a lot of questions. I'll let you go wherever you want, and I'll promise not to interrupt.
No. It was probably a young age. I mean, a lot of gay guys will say, I always knew I was gay. And looking back, it's not so much sexual, but there is this sort of inclination that you're different. And I think a lot of it just has to do, a lot of times, with temperament. There's a certain sensitivity there. I mean, little boys can be quite cruel and quite vicious. Yeah. And I'm sure girls can be that way too. But I remember looking back as a child where a sort of teasing and bullying, and not that I was the only one, but I think that's kind of part and parcel with the way boys interact with each other sometimes. And it bothered me terribly, where I could see other boys, it didn't. Maybe it did, but outwardly, I could see it didn't affect them. To me, it devastated me.
Yeah.
And I was sensitive, and I still am sensitive. And I couldn't, after you hurt me, I couldn't interrelate with you. And I think little boys can be malicious at times, but I think a lot of it wasn't malicious. It was just the way
Boys
that
are.
boys were interacting. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I couldn't. I pulled back. And then
Mhm.
girls seemed like a safe harbor. It's kind of like it was more. It wasn't so much roughhousing and bantering and sort of this cruel uh, sort of interaction. The
The
girls
alpha
were,
male kind of thing. We're
yeah,
all
the
trying to.
girls were sitting on the more on the sidelines having lunch, talking about, Duran Duran, whoever, Billy Idol, whoever was the bit. So I was
Right.
like, this seems safer. I'm going to hang out with the girls and talk
Yeah.
about, soap operas.
Yeah. I agree with you. One of the things I work with people on, Joseph, and do you like Joseph or Joe? What do you go by?
Joseph, I like, yeah.
I like Joseph too. Is I teach temperament, and I also teach emotional intelligence classes.
Mm.
And some of the things as I go, most of the people I see who people go, oh, clearly so and so is going to be gay. He's young, and look at how tender he is, and look at how he always wants to hang out with the girls. And I say, that doesn't mean he wants to have sex with a male. That doesn't mean, because sex isn't really introduced in our minds until later. But I see a lot of people saying, oh, you're probably gay, and starting to put this in people's heads and going, and not that obvious. It's not, but going, why is it that when we see a man who's tender, we have to assume that means gay and not just a man who's tender? Why can't we accept tenderness in males and say, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Or neat and a good dresser.
Right? Why does a snazzy dressed male have to be gay? And that's one of the stereotypes that I think we've built up for ourselves. Oh, look at him. My daughter's always like, oh, I've got a good gaydar. I can tell. I'm like, my daughter, Gabrielle, I'm like, I've talked to a lot of guys who, they didn't know until someone said, oh, you must be. And then introduce the sexual abuse, where for males, sexual abuse is so traumatic in the sense that a girl is victimized. It's horrifying. I get it. I'm not minimizing anyone's abuse. But a male is often forced to have an erection and an ejaculation. So he's got
Yeah.
mental.
In there.
So psychologically, this hurts. This is uncomfortable. I don't like this. Physically, my body likes this. And then your abuser is sitting here saying, oh, see, you like this. You must be gay. And so that screws with a male's heads. Am I on track there? Is that off?
No, not at all. No. It's interesting too because part of the early part of the goals, I would say, of the early LGBT, well, it wasn't LGBT, the gay liberation movement was sort of breaking down what were these sort of gender bourgeois stereotypes where an effeminate guy could be straight and a very butch
Right.
guy could be gay. But as we've moved along, especially I see it in the gay male community, these stereotypes are enshrined and they do it themselves. I mean, they've done it to me. They go, Joe, look at you. You're still gay, So,
because why do they say you're still gay? Because you're still
some sort
tender?
of some sort of affectation I have,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I mean,
then,
I've met straight men who I go, oh, gee, they seem kind of gay,
and then you find out that they're married with 5 kids and they're
Yeah,
fine.
I'm happy and they're not in the closet. They're not,
Right.
But then I've met quite men that appear quite masculine and have rather straight male interests, but they're homosexual. So
Yeah. So do you think
yeah,
people are born gay? What are your thoughts on that?
no. Well, almost half of gay men were sexually molested as a child
Right.
by someone of the same sex.
Right.
Now that number is only about 7% in straight men. It's a big difference.
Yeah.
I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think the father-son relationship has a lot to do with it too.
Yeah.
Now, not everybody because I've had people say to me, well, Joe, I'm a straight guy, had a bad relationship with my dad and I'm not gay, And then I've had people say, well, a lot of guys, most guys have difficult relationships with their fathers and they're not all gay. But homosexuality in men is rather rare. It's about 2% of men. So only certain sensitive men it's going to affect that way.
Right.
I mean,
But you're right. Sensitive, You did feel out of place on the sports, field. Your dad was more critical, as you said. So it's not like every guy who doesn't have the great relation, and then you were sexually abused. So it's just not as cookie cutter, but you're right. There's absolute correlations that people have to put into place as well.
No. And I mean, a lot of times this is all anecdotal, but a lot of times what I've seen in a family where there's a gay child and there's other siblings, a lot of times another sibling will have some kind of psychological problem, whether it's gambling, porn addictions, not able to have a stable relationship with someone of the opposite sex. There's other issues. It just, the trauma in childhood and the dysfunction in the family, it manifested in a different way in adulthood. So, and a lot of, and I've seen straight guys that have had traumatic childhoods, but they did have a strong male mentor in their life, healthy, that helped them. A lot of times it was through sports,
Yeah.
So.
Do you have siblings?
I do.
How many? Where are you in the order?
I'm last.
Of?
Yeah, of four.
Of four. Okay, I'm second of four. Girls, boys?
2 girls and 2 boys.
Okay. So did you and your brother connect? Did you connect more with your sisters?
Yes.
With your sisters?
Yes, which is typical.
Typical of what? Men who are tender and have.
Typical of like a pre-homosexual boy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you always connect with your sisters more than if you have a brother or your dad.
Before we get into the pornography, do you consider yourself gay?
No.
Okay, so well then let's hold that thought. And let me ask this, and then we'll go to the porn. Do you still find yourself attracted to men, or are you attracted to women, or
less so?
Less so.
I'm kind of a unique. I don't know. Maybe I'm unique. I'm kind of burned out on sex. I don't have interest in it. At 50, I lived a full life through my 20s.
Right.
So I hate to say it, I'm not. It sounds kind of abnormal, but
it doesn't, because of the nature of what you were in an industry that took what is beautiful and made by God and then just shredded everything about it. Sex became an act. Sex became a sign of pain. Sex became something dirty, dark. Am I correct?
I have much more friendships with men than women, and I'm more comfortable around men. So, but I don't think it has anything to do with attraction.
Mm-hmm.
I just, I find women to be a bit very complicated.
You're not different than any other man in all of creation. We are more complicated, Joseph. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, take us there for.
Sure.
So you got into the porn. How did that happen? You don't just go, oh, sign me up. Take us on that journey. Did someone lead you into it? Did you stumble upon it? What happened?
Oh, not really. I mean, I came out in 1988, which is a bad year to come out. I mean, that was really the peak of the AIDS epidemic. And I came out in San Francisco, so I was 19 years old. And, I was drawn there because I'd never been around men, never had relationships with men. So that was a good place to start up, a relationship. I thought, I didn't intend to go there, have a lot of sex, get involved with weird kinky stuff, get involved with porn. Actually in the back of my mind, I was just like, I'm coming down here to the Castro district. I was like, I'm going to find friends. And I did find friends, but it's a highly sexualized environment.
I've been to San Francisco. I see that.
I mean, where you have all men and you don't have the tempering influence of women, I mean, it's going to be problematic. I mean, I wasn't the first to see that. I mean, Randy Schultz, who wrote And the Band Played On, saw it in the 80s. It's just like, it's getting out of control down here in the Castro. A lot of sex, just a lot of anonymous sex, a lot of extremes. And I jumped right into that.
Lived the lifestyle.
Yeah, rather quickly. And, getting involved in pornography wasn't a big deal, because before that I was already doing a lot of weird stuff. So actually it wasn't weird at all, really. It was kind of tame. And the people weren't freaky. Nobody ever forced me, coerced me. The people in pornography I found to be quite respectful. I know women have a very different experience down in Los Angeles and Hollywood, where I think there is a lot of exploitation. But the gay porn was much smaller, and it was just a lot of gay guys, doing it, and a lot of times for fun,
Yeah. So what percent of people in the porn industry, let me go with gay porn, and then if you are able to answer for straight porn, if you're able to say it, not gay porn, what percent of people are A, in it because they chose to be, and B, and I know these are random numbers, I don't want any of my viewers to think that you have done studies or whatever, but and how many of them do you think are doing it unhappily?
Well, it's so different now. I mean, back then you didn't have the internet, and it was just there was many, it was much smaller. I mean, there weren't that many people willing to do it. I mean, then it was probably hundreds. Now there's like tens of thousands, and it's a big business. Yeah, it's a big business. And I think it's different for the women than the men, but now they're so much younger too.
And so many of them are sex trafficked. My daughter and I have arguments about this, and I say, I pray God has put porn, I said porn stars is what I call them, on my heart often for decades. I mean, I've never even heard of you. And I have always felt such a soft spot in my heart because so many of them are either sex trafficked or runaways or
a lot of the women, yeah,
just victims of abuse and sad. And then I've heard some former porn stars talking in shows and talking about just the abuse and the things that because women are more often objectified through pornography than our males. Sit down, let me do this to you, let me put this in you, let me hurt you. And then the one speaker, and I wish I could remember her name, she's like, after they've ripped you up physically, like you've gone to the hospital for some of the things they've done to you, then they move you on to you're the old used up, we'll get the young perky breasted girls to do this again, and you have to move to like the more S&M types of things. And they talk about how they just pray, and she, whoever this female was that I was listening to, talked about some of the men as well, that some of the men felt like they didn't know how to get out, or they were forced into it. They were forced to take massive quantities of Viagra, and how that affected them physically. One girl was just talking about breaking his man parts, and I'm like, wow, I mean, things we don't think about. And that's why I wanted parents not to have their kids listening to the shows, but I wanted to be out there because I want to clear up that misconception that people who get into pornography are just nymphomaniacs and love sex, and we want to be in this video, and we want you to what would be your overall perception? Yes, it was different then, but you still minister to people in the industry. What's your perception of, maybe take what my thoughts are of the porn industry and what your knowledge is, and how would you kind of characterize?
I think, gosh, I don't want to sound like a porn advocate or anything like that, or an apologist. I think it's different for different people. I think people who are young, and there are people that get into it at 18 years old, and God forbid younger. I think there is a lot of room for them to be exploited and abused. I've met people who have been through that in the porn industry, are older, and look at it as a business. And I don't know. It's weird. Like
so
I
it's
say,
a little of each, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it just depends on, I think, the age of the person. And I think a lot of people go into it already wounded at the time. I mean, I certainly was.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can I don't know, it's weird. And now, because of the internet, there's so much variety. I mean, people can stay home and be a porn star and not even interact with other people. I mean, they can do it, I guess, on their own terms. And there are people that do that. Are they being exploited? Yeah, of course. By the people watching it, they're being objectified, like you said.
So,
but what is in their background? I don't know. It would lead someone to do sexual things in front of a live cam at home. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I just don't think there's an easy answer anymore.
Okay, and that's fair.
We're like, everyone is being exploited by men. I don't
Well,
know.
not by men. I think some are being exploited by women, but I think a large percentage of people are being exploited than,
I think it's complicated.
yeah,
It's because it's such a huge,
industry.
huge industry. I mean, when I was involved, it was much smaller, and you had to walk into a dirty bookstore, especially to get gay porn, you know. And then things started changing later. You could go into Blockbuster. I'm dating myself, you know, and then they had, you know, porn videos. But now it's just on the internet.
Yeah.
So it's strange. I don't know.
So what's your story then? So you just kind of started getting into it. Was there a point where you felt uncomfortable? Where, and how did you exit it? When did God enter the picture? You're a Catholic boy. Did God stay in your life? Did God leave your life? Keep kind of this thread going. Where was God? Where were you? How'd you come out of this lifestyle? Because here you are today, 30 years later, a Catholic missionary in San Francisco, trying to win more souls out of that lifestyle and for the
Yeah.
kingdom.
I was raised Catholic, but I would say at times mainly marginally Catholic, and in Catholic schools during the 70s and 80s, which were a disaster. So, I mean, I graduated knowing nothing about my faith. Probably the only thing I knew is I didn't like it. It seemed dated. It just seemed
Right.
irrelevant. It just seemed stupid. So it's not so much that I left the Catholic Church. I just kind of walked away. I don't know. I
Hmm.
don't know how to describe it. It just,
That's perfect.
yeah, you can't leave something that I didn't value it. So it's not that I
Yeah.
left. I just was
That's
like,
a really good way to phrase it.
no.
I always loved my God. I always loved my faith. I never had one of those rebellious spirits. But when I just started living my life and going on, and then I get married, and then I meet this other guy, and I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't be having an affair, but I'm doing this. And then, only after a while, when you start seeing the dark side, when it really starts touching your soul, that's for me and for others that I know, it's like, you're like, what am I doing? And that's when God really starts speaking to you. And then I'm like, well, when did I turn away from God? It's like, well, I don't know if I turned away as much as I just stopped paying attention. So I'm hearing kind
Mm,
of similar with you. It's
that
like,
doesn't, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And I just felt that I did feel like I had been born gay. It was just the way that I was made. And I just felt I was living my life. But I
mm-hmm,
didn't feel like the Catholic Church was discriminatory or homophobic. I mean, that wasn't the impression that I had gotten from the priests. When I was younger, they were quite supportive of me, um, coming to that conclusion that
right.
I
Well,
was.
because back then there were a lot more pro-homosexual priests that had entered the
Oh, there's a lot
seminaries.
now. There's a lot
Yeah,
now.
yes, and it
Oh,
was not good.
there's just as many now, I think.
Yeah, but
But
that's a different
the
show.
yeah, the Catholic Church wasn't offering me anything. I mean, it just it it was what the gay world was offering me was much more attractive.
Right.
I didn't want to hang out with an old middle-aged gay priest. I just, I wanted to be with people my own age.
Yeah.
And so that's when I went to San Francisco. And
So it was
I
fun. It was
oh
fun
yeah,
for a while.
the beginning, yeah. And especially in the beginning, I think the longer you're in it, it's like being in a cult. The longer you're in it, it's like, oh, this is not great, but what else
Is
am
there?
I gonna do? Here I am. I got to make the best of it. And everybody's in the same boat. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but
So take us
especially
out of that then. Where were
yeah, especially
you
especially for the guys, your body starts breaking down. I mean, it's different for the girls, for the
physically? You
lesbian.
mean you can't perform as much because too much
Can't
time?
do it. You just can't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
yeah, the body. You're
Yeah.
using the body in a way that it was not designed.
Yeah. I understand that. I understand. So
So,
so keep going. When did you start making this transition to I want to leave this lifestyle? Did you say I'm not gay? Did you say I don't like that my
oh
body's
no,
breaking down? What was going on in Joseph's head?
yeah, nothing. I just was going about my business. And things had gotten darker and darker and sicker and sicker and more perverse. And I got to the point where I just did not care if I lived or died. I was
Mm,
like, I'd lost a lot of friends to AIDS, and I was getting close to 30, and it was like, it's just, it's not hot anymore. I've done everything. I've been with everybody. I'm just like, this sucks. So at that point, I was like, I don't care. I don't care. So I became really self-destructive. And I had a near-death experience. And yeah, and the reality of death was not what I thought it would be. It was a lot scarier.
What was
And
it?
it was hell.
Like
So,
God showed you hell?
yeah,
Can you tell me about that?
sure,
Okay,
sure.
tell me about that near-death experience.
Yeah, I had been quite reckless that night, and I ended up in an emergency room, very, very ill. And I was like, well, here we go. I wasn't scared at all, and I knew I was dying, but I was like, it's just I'm gonna fall asleep, rest.
Wake up on the
This
other side.
No, not even that. I just kind of thought an
Okay.
end. I was kind of like a nihilist. It would be like over,
Okay.
and that sounded good. And but then things rapidly changed, and I was like, no, no, like this is only the beginning. It's going to get a lot worse. And I just, for some bizarre reason, I hadn't thought of Jesus. It sounds trite, but I hadn't thought of Jesus in a long time. I just called out to him. I said, "Wow, please help me. I don't like this." And it was over.
Did you see hell? Did you talk to God?
Oh
Did
yeah,
you?
I saw demonic entities all around me that were coming for me. And my mother, God bless her, she had shown up and was in. I haven't really talked to her about it, but I assume she surmised that things were not going well for me. So she was praying, and I was quite upset, and I was blaspheming and really like, don't pray for me. But then
In
right
this
after,
near-death experience is
yeah,
what you were. Okay.
but then right after that, I called out, and it was
So the
over.
Lord's
But
showing you these demons around you and the demonic feelings, and then you see or you sense your mom praying from another area.
I could see her. She was right there with me. I could see her, that she was
Wow.
praying.
And you didn't want her to pray, or at least,
Oh gosh, no. I got very angry. How dare you?
yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think you? Oh, keep going.
And then I blasphemed, and that's when everything just whoosh came on me.
The demonic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And
So
then I
then
was
you
scared,
called
and
out.
then I was scared, and I didn't want to die at that point.
Wow, what a grace. What a
Yeah. But
grace
I
that
was
God showed you.
resolved to die before that, and then I didn't want to.
So when you called out to Jesus, he didn't speak to you. He didn't say, here's where you're going to go. He just kind of gave you that sense and then let you come back.
Yep. And it was over.
And when you came back, then what happened in the hospital room? Were you like, oh my gosh?
It was very bizarre. I wrote about it in my book. It was like, I mean, people talk about being born again. That's what it was like. It was like, I don't know. I felt like a little child. I didn't know
Yeah.
anything. I was very confused. I didn't know where I had been. I didn't know what I had done. I think I almost went back to a place before the trauma. And it was like, it was a good place to be, but it was a bad place to be too, because there was a long road after that. There was a lot of healing I had to do.
Did you?
God's,
Yeah,
yeah, I
keep
mean,
going.
Christ saved me in that moment, but there was a lot of work.
Did you leave porn right after that? Or did you go back to it? When you left that hospital, what happened when you left the hospital?
I went home. My parents took me home, and I had been rather estranged from them for a long time. And
In San
you know,
Francisco? Are your parents in San Francisco?
no, they're right outside in the Bay Area.
So they were still in Cal. Okay.
Oh yeah, very close. And
Right.
they didn't have to take me in because I had been quite a nasty, vicious person.
Young man. Yeah.
Yeah, angry, bitter. Yeah. And they didn't have to take me in, but my mom and dad took me in. And I mean, I was very much the prodigal son. I came home in a body bag. So
Yeah. Did they know about your lifestyle?
no, not the particulars. I think my dad especially knew that there was something seriously wrong with me.
I mean, they knew that you came out as homosexual, or did they not even know that?
I never did that with them. No,
Okay.
no, I just left. No,
Okay.
I went to live my life. I went to college and I left. And I was like,
Did they
no.
find out? I mean, your mom's alive. She's
Oh yeah.
probably read your book.
Oh, no,
No, don't
no,
read my book, Mom.
no, you know what? No, there's things in there she doesn't need to know. It's
Yeah.
why, yeah, no.
No, no, no. I respect that. I just trying to, for my viewers, trying to get, take us on this journey because everyone's transition is different. Your life is different. You're unique. God took your story and
It
he's
was
brought
very
you.
much like St. Paul. It wasn't like St. Augustine.
So yours was bam.
It was went from one moment to the next.
So
Yeah,
you're at your parents' house. Did you stay there for a while? Did you
I
say,
did.
I've got to
I
go back
did.
to San Fran? I've got to start
Well,
ministering to these men?
no, I did eventually have to go back just to clean things up. I had things there, but this is where my story, and it's in my book again. It takes a
What is the
bizarre.
name of your book?
It's called. I have it right here.
Put it up.
It's called Disordered,
Okay.
and it's quite a thick book. Um, and yeah, well, I came back to the faith, which was very bizarre because it's like the last place I wanted to go was the Catholic Church. But as I was away and doing my thing, my parents I had also had a conversion, and they were back in the church very strong. This is why I think I had the conversion in the first place, because my parents had had their conversion, and through this again sounds trite, through the power of prayer and through their self-sacrifice, especially my father's, who had had a lot of physical um, illness, for them offering all of that for me, that's what got me out of the life. And I had no idea. I had no idea that they were doing that. But when I came to live with them, I was like, oh my gosh, my mom and dad have become like super religious. And
Did it turn you off or was there a kind of a peace with that?
it, I guess, no, it didn't turn me off, but at first it was, I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it. I thought, well, this is strange, but I wasn't disrespectful towards it. I got it, but I couldn't relate. I just had to start from day one, from like page one
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
relationship with God, because I didn't have one. So, and there was a lot of twists and turns. I got involved with the Catholic Church again, met some really bad priests, predatory, abusive priests, and
After your
ended,
conversion,
yeah.
did you call them out on it or you just kind of noticed it and walked away or?
No, because they, again, and not all of them were bad. I met some excellent, awesome priests,
True, true.
but I've met some really bad characters, some bad actors. And they, again, although I was older, by then I was 30, they recognized in me like a really lost soul. And then they tried to manipulate me and abuse me.
But praise God that you were able to recognize it at this point in your life and kind
I
of.
wasn't.
I thought you said you did. Oh, so you didn't see it until years later then.
Right. No, and they like gaslighted me too. They were like, this is what disappointed me about coming back to Catholicism, is after all of my experiences in the gay community, they were still telling me that God had made me gay. They were still pushing the same rhetoric. And I'm like, wow, the church has not changed. I'm like,
Well, and I
this
always,
really
go ahead.
bothered, it bothered me really bad.
And I always want to defend my faith. And for those of you
Oh, go
watching,
ahead.
do your research. It's not conspiracy theory. There's documentation. Bella Dodd spoke to Congress in 1945, 47. Several communists have infiltrated the Catholic Church and Freemasons, where they wanted to intentionally get good-looking, homosexual, intelligent men to subvert the faith. And what they did is they tried some pipelines like Cardinal Bernardin in Chicago. There's some specific dioceses that were jam-packed full of get as many homosexual men as you can. So when you get into the confessional, whatever, they'll tell you it's okay. But there are still the good priests. And that's what you and I are saying. They're good men in the priesthood.
But look at what Archbishop Vigano had to say. That's still going on.
Oh, it's still going on.
Yeah. And my heart goes out to people with same-sex attraction that are looking for truth in the Catholic Church, because it is a minefield.
It is.
And you're gonna have to maneuver your way, navigate your way through it. And it shouldn't be that way.
No. Because they're
No.
supposed to be our leaders. But the only way that they can navigate is you have got to get your face in the Word. You have got to be on your knees in prayer. You've got to read the Bible. For instance, you get a lot of priests, and now you can see how it's affected the culture, saying, oh, homosexuality is accepted by God. He loves you. Of course he loves you. But he specifically said that action is not, that's condemnable, just like my adultery was when I was having the affair. And so read the Bible. Read God's word. Pray. The Lord will press upon you. He will start giving you, like you had, the spirit of who's a good person who just really feels the spirit. And I have said this before, but since I'm doing on viewing, I won't say who this person is, but very close family member left her husband for a female, and devout Catholic. And so for years she lived with the other woman and had that sexual relationship. But she said her spirit didn't feel good. And so she'd go to confession, and one priest would say, no, it's a sin. You're going to hell if you don't stop living your homosexual lifestyle. And she said, and one time I went to a priest and he's like, oh, it's so wonderful. And he got up and he hugged her, right? But what she said is when he hugged me, actually my skin repulsed because he's supposed to be in persona Christi. So if you are confessing a sin, the Lord is going to make sure that you find truth, because that's his church. So I think you and I will both agree the Catholic Church is Christ's church. It's an institution, but it's flawed because it's got men and women like us. We're sinners in it. And so I just want to make sure I don't dissuade anyone from going into church. We need you, good men and women in the church, to get the evil out and, rise up. The Lord said in end times, I will have a remnant,
I think it's really fraught with difficulty and danger for somebody that's same-sex attracted.
Yeah,
because
I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, for example, like let's say a young woman who's contemplating an abortion and she goes to speak to a priest. I don't think there's many priests that are going to tell that young lady to go ahead and go have an abortion. And I don't think there's a ministry at that parish where he's going to send her, they will drive her and pay for the abortion and facilitate it. I don't think that's going to happen. But with the issue of same-sex attraction, there's a good bet that somebody approaching a priest in a Catholic church is going to be confirmed in the identity, and they will shuffle them. That's not the wrong word. They will send them into an LGBT ministry at the parish that's just going to confirm
the lifestyle.
Everything. Say, get married, settle down. There's nothing wrong. This is the way God made you. God blessed it. God loves it. That's a real problem.
Yeah, we had a hard time in our diocese here. We just recently got an Encourage chapter. You're probably familiar with that.
Oh, very well.
Yeah, so Courage, do you want to tell our viewers what Courage is?
Sure. It's an apostolate founded, I guess, like in the early 80s in New York City. Who was that? Cardinal Cook, I think, at the time. And he got Father John Harvey, who was a priest. I knew him. And it started out mainly for men with same-sex attraction. It was a fraternity, kind of not a self-help group, but
it's like AA meetings, right?
It's
Come together.
I wish it was more like AA meetings, but it's a support group for
men dealing with same-sex attraction.
And they want to live. I mean, this is the important part. They want to live according to the teachings of the Catholic Church.
So Courage is for the men and women who are dealing with homosexual.
Yeah, and Courage is for the parents of LGBT.
Or family members, siblings,
Any.
Yeah. Any. So we had one here, and the reason I brought that up is because
what diocese do you don't mind?
We are in the Richmond diocese. I'm in Virginia.
Okay.
And it's just what's so angering is it took forever to get it approved. It's approved through the church, but without naming names, we have a bishop here who was McCarrick's right-hand man for a little bit, and then
lovely.
Right. So, and I'm not saying anything bad about our bishop, but I'm saying because he was made new for our diocese, but it's like who groomed him, who taught him, who kind of assuaged, and it's not so bad. So I can understand the pressure he's probably under. I know all these other gay priests and bishops, and then you got but we still have to do what God wants. So yeah, look for the courage and encourage chapter in your diocese.
Yeah, courage is not perfect, but it's really, if you want something rational and you're Catholic, it's the only show in town.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I live in San Francisco, the gay capital of the world, and courage is more or less just buried. Just does not have the support. It has to have the support of the local ordinary and the priests.
Yeah.
And if the priests aren't supporting it and the priests aren't referring people to it, because courage is not apostolic, it's not going to go out and
Find
share.
people. Right.
Yeah, it's not going to tell people, hey, come on down to the meeting on Saturday night or whatever. That's not the way it works, unfortunately. I wish they would do that. But
Right.
if priests are not referring people to it,
yeah,
it's not gonna happen.
Well, so then the Lord sends men like you. So you had this near-death experience. You move back in with your parents. You see how they've come closer to the Lord. You start drawing closer to the Lord. You're having this, like you said, a Saul to Paul moment, but now the healing took some time. You went back into, I mean, now I call you a Catholic missionary. Your mission field is other, correct me if I'm wrong, homosexual men or homosexual men in the gay porn industry?
Oh, no, not just the LGBT community.
So what do you do? Do you go knock on doors? Tell me about an average day in the life of Joseph
Oh,
Sciambra.
sure. This year's been disappointing because everything has been canceled. So usually I go to Gay Pride in San Francisco, which is large. It's the largest gathering of the LGBT community in the world, over 1 million people in attendance. And you can't have a long conversation, meaningful conversation with people, but it only takes a couple seconds. You can pray with them. And a lot of people, you would be surprised, are quite open, quite nice, quite friendly, and they know what I'm about. And but they want a prayer, and they want to know. I mean, they're appreciative that somebody like me took the time to go down there. I take rosaries and just to have a kind word and say hello.
So what
But then
happened?
I do go to the more hardcore sex fairs. Like I go to Folsom, I go to Dory, and that's much more intense. And
What's a sex fair? I'm sorry for my ignorance.
it's okay. In San Francisco, they allow like these bondage discipline fairs, so people can enact all these scenarios in tabloids. You can have sex on the public streets. So, and I used to do that. So I go there and I just talk to people, and I actually, people think I'm kind of crazy, but I actually really enjoy it. I like to talk to the guys.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Do children go there? Do people at least have the decency to keep kids out, or?
Well, it is monitored. The Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, which is this group of drag queens, they tend to monitor the
Audience.
Who's going in and out, and well, that was a Freudian slip. Who's going, into the area?
I didn't even catch that till you said that.
And yeah, children are typically, I've never seen. Now, Pride's different. Pride is just open, everybody.
It's like a parade.
Yeah, and I don't see people having sex, but I've certainly seen a lot of naked people, and a lot of drug use. So I don't quite understand why people
want to take their kids. Yeah.
Yeah, but they certainly do. And I've, like, again, I didn't get to go this year, but I do the Holy Spirit tends to send the same people, because even like Folsom, there's about 500,000 people. So the chances of meeting the same people again is like pretty slim. But I've gone year after year, and I tend to meet sometimes the same people over and over.
God's got a plan. Hopefully you win those ones.
And they go, hey, and they're like, oh, and I hear the most wonderful stories, like, oh, you gave me a rosary last year, and I kept it, and I kept it on my nightstand. And there was like a couple of moments where things were like really dark, and I felt desolate, and I don't know how to pray it, but I just held it, and it made me feel better. And I was just like, oh, that's awesome. I know, because when I was in the gay life, no Christian reached out to me at all.
Shame
and I probably would have, like, I don't want to have anything to do with you. But You never know. I kind of see myself as like Johnny Appleseed. I go there, I plant some seeds, and I leave.
Do you have
And
any success stories of men or women who have come to you later, have come to the church and who have
yes,
said,
I've had a
can you
few.
share?
I've had a few. Yeah, one was really touching. It was a guy that was involved in prostitution. Um, he was transgender, so he was dressing up as a female, and he really wanted to get out of the life, but he didn't know.
How?
I mean, it sounds kind of basic,
No, but
and
I
and
get that.
and the advice I gave him was like kind of like duh, but I think he just needed somebody to sort of be
To
there
hold
with
his
him.
hand.
Yeah, and I said, well, why don't you start just like take all the clothes, take the wigs, take the makeup, just put it in a big hefty bag and dump it. And I was kind of like, that's a good way to start. You don't have that stuff. That was like really difficult for him. It was like telling a drug addict, dump the syringe and
Or a hoarder to throw that one piece of paper away.
yeah.
It's
So
the start.
I talked to him for quite a while, and finally he called me and said, Joe, I dumped it. And I said, well, now this is going to be the more difficult part. How about
Right.
moving out of San Francisco? I know that's more difficult, work and relationships and everything. And he slowly was able to get out of the city because it was just too much of a temptation there for him. And
Right.
I hear from him once in a while. He's doing well. So, but it's a difficult road. I know he's got lapses and
Who doesn't? Right. I mean,
yeah.
some people have clean, bam, I'm done.
I've
Right.
never gone back
Yeah,
to that.
that's
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. But
Any other stories?
that's kind of my favorite. That's my
Mm.
favorite.
Now you have a website. I want my viewers to know because I
Yeah,
went
go
to your
ahead.
website. Can you tell them what the address is? Because you've got some
Yeah.
wonderful stories there.
Oh,
Videos
Joe.
are.
Yeah, josephshambra.com. So
Mhm.
that's my name. So you'll find my book there, and I have a blog. I also do interviews like you do, um, and I
And if they want to have you on a guest on their show, just go to your website. There's a
yeah.
contact page.
Yeah, I haven't done one of these in a long time. It's been a while,
Well,
and
then
I
we need
don't
to do them more often.
yeah,
Get
and
the
I
word
don't
out.
speak in public. Uh, I think I've spoken in a Catholic church probably 2 or 3 times over the past decade.
Yeah. Well, if you're ever on this East Coast, I get you in my church.
Really? Okay. Well,
Well,
maybe
yeah.
but if the bishop finds out, he might have a
I
problem.
don't know. Well, yeah. Okay. We'll talk about that when we're not being recorded. We'll figure that part out. So I know I could talk to you forever. You have such a heart. So I have two
And so do
questions. I
you.
thank you. You and we just want to win souls for Christ. That's
Yeah,
what
and
we
we're
want
not
to
here
do.
to judge anybody. You
Me
know.
either. Me either. I can be opposed to an LGBTQ lifestyle, but that doesn't mean I'm opposed to an LGBTQ person.
Actually,
Right?
I've met more wicked and evil people in the Catholic Church than I have in the gay community.
That's a sad testament.
I do. I do. I sense a lot of loss, a lot of woundedness, and you know this as a doctor, a lot of pain in that community, and a lot of loss, and they just don't know what to do, and
I
they don't
guess a
know where
good
to
thing is they're in the
go.
community, though. So what I'm hearing you say is at least
Well,
they're there, but we need to talk. We need to
but
reach out.
it's a self-affirming community. There's no outward voices a lot of times that are able to get through. So it's just everybody
Well,
is facilitating everybody's woundedness.
what would you do differently if you were in that environment? You could make a change,
I
kind of make that
tell
more tangible.
I tell people start in the family because every LGBT person comes from a family. They don't emerge out of a cabbage patch. They're from a family. And a lot of times I see, especially here in the Bay Area, and I see it in Catholic families where everybody's very affirming. Oh gosh, isn't this great? They came out, aren't they brave? This and that. I just care about their happiness. You know, some of those things are true, but I wish there was one person in the family, aunt, uncle, brother, sister, mom, dad, whoever, cousin, would say, wait a minute, maybe there's something else going on here. And people always know the things that go on in a family. A lot of times, outside, it's difficult, but I wish there was just one person that maybe took that gay boy aside, that lesbian girl, that transgender person aside, and said,
I'm not going to affirm that, but
yeah, have you, maybe there's something else going on. I care about you. I love you. Let's talk about it. Let's think about this. Were you just born that way? Is it as simple as that?
mm-hmm.
And I think if you provide a safe space for people, I think sometimes some people will open up and say, well, something happened, to me, and they've never told anybody else.
Yeah. That's why you got some of the evil people in leadership. I'm not naming names or communities that are trying to ban and have, for instance, in California, conversion therapy, for instance. They don't
Awful.
want you to have those voices. They want to silence the church. But you are right. I met you through Layla Miller, right?
Yeah, I love her.
I love her.
Great
So her
lady.
most recent radio show I did with her was about her blog article that she did. If you haven't read it, you need to read it. But it was the biggest mistake of modern Catholic parents. And it was basically that which you just said. When we affirm that which our child does incorrectly, lives a life, they're having sex with their boyfriend or girlfriend, they're living a gay lifestyle, they're having an affair, they left their spouse, they're divorcing. Society will say, well, that's okay. And parents, I don't want my child to not like me, so they condone it. And her article said that is the biggest mistake you can make, not only for this child and in this world. They need to hear that one voice, like you just said, but for the eternity, your soul, you have to answer to God for saying, when he says you told your child it was okay to live a homosexual lifestyle, you have to answer for that. Now your child has to answer as well, but part of the sin is on you as a parent. No one wants to think of eternity.
No. And part of the fault too is in the silence, where people
Yes,
just don't
the
say
sin of omission.
anything. And I have to say, the one person in my life who said no was my father. And my dad didn't say a lot, but I'll never forget it. I was home. We were talking about coming out to my parents, and there's different ways of coming out. But I don't think I didn't ever articulate it. But when I would occasionally come home, I would bring people that looked like from the Road Warrior, from San Francisco, with just the leather and the hair and the
Right.
green mohawk and the
They
tattoos
knew.
and the peer. Oh yeah. So, and my dad, as I was leaving that weekend, just said, Joe, I love you. Never again. You cannot come home and do this. And he had had grandchildren at the time, because my siblings had had kids. And he was completely in his right to say that to me. I was incredibly offended. But I always remember that my dad cared enough to say, no, this isn't cool.
Yes, that's what Layla and I talked about on the radio show. When I was having an affair in New Hampshire in 1987, 88, the guy, he thought he was being nice, and he bought me a ticket to go home to see family. So I visited my mom and my dad and siblings, right? And then I went to my mother-in-law's house so that she could see her grandchildren. And this guy came with me, and I said, hey, can he come in the house? It had been like 2 years away from her son. And she said, no, he can't. He can stay in the car. And it was really awkward. I stayed and let her play with the kids, but I knew this guy was sitting in the car, so it's like a half hour and then I had to go. I will never forget that. She just went to the Lord on February 28th of this year. And I have told people that she was one of the voices who said, I will not condone that behavior. And you need that kind of pressure, because too many people sat there and let me have an affair and said, well, maybe it's maybe you weren't happy. No, it's a sin. It's wrong. It hurts my children, hurt my husband. And one voice is all we need. One voice, many of us, just one voice to plant, like you said, Johnny Appleseed, just plant that seed and say, you need to rethink this one.
It sounds super simplistic, but it works.
It does, because the soul knows it. The soul knows what it needs to hear.
And don't harangue the person. Once you've said your piece, say it. And then I think that's when the tough work. And I know people don't like to say, oh, I'll pray for you, because they feel like it's a pat answer. But pray. And I think if you really commit to a person that's living a really dark life, I think suffering is going to come to you. So get ready, especially if it's your kid.
Yeah.
I think if you have a kid that's lost and you say to the Lord, okay, I'm willing to do anything to save this person, the suffering is going to come. And it came to my dad in unimaginable ways, but he just picked it up. He just picked it up. Didn't complain, didn't make a big deal out of it, just did it. And that's what saved me. I know it. I think my relationship with my dad is complicated and goes so far back. And I think only a father can make a gay son. And I think only a father can get a son out of gay. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty profound.
Yeah. I think it's a deep relationship between fathers and sons, not between mothers and daughters and fathers is shallow, but it's deep. And that's the one, I mean, that's the one I know, so that's the one I can talk about.
Shoot, I was listening to you so well, and I forgot my next question. Hold on. I was going to say that. Don't you agree with me? That is one of the most beautiful things that the Catholic faith offers that other Christian religions don't typically talk about, is the value of suffering. Too many people, Christian and non-Christian, want to run from suffering, but the Catholic Church teaches there is a value.
They have the prosperity gospel.
Right. You know? Yeah. God wants everything to be good. Well, maybe not on this earth, maybe in heaven. But if you offer your suffering up, say, I will suffer. And if I'm, hurting, or I've got cancer, or I've, got this whatever tremendous pain, and I say, Lord, I will receive this pain with joy for my son Joseph, or that my prodigal child will come home. The pain isn't minimized. Sometimes physically the pain is increased, but there's something peaceful about knowing there's purpose in your suffering. Don't you agree?
Yeah. And it wasn't that the father of the prodigal son was just going about his business. I mean, to a certain degree he did, but he was waiting. That was probably painful every day, waiting, watching, where is he? And he saw him from a distance. So he was waiting. And I think that was very much, my parents were just.
How beautiful. Your dad would be honored by you.
Yeah, God bless him. I love him. And I know he's praying for me now. It's sad a lot of times that we come to appreciate our parents a little too late. Yeah, I never got my. I think people need to understand their parents and know where they came from, because my dad came from a place of a lot of suffering in childhood, and we don't see it as kids. We just see it especially our father is just very monolithic. So I because dads ask me for advice a lot of times, I say just be humble and open and honest and vulnerable with your sons. Don't pretend. Just, of course, with a little child, you're not going to tell them about your childhood. But if you have a son that is experiencing trouble, be open and honest with them about your own life, your own suffering. That'll help a lot.
Yeah. Wow, we are running so short on time, and I just have enjoyed this. So I got two questions I want to ask you. Finish this sentence. When I die, I will know I will have made a difference if, or when. When I die, I will know I will have made a difference if.
I will know I've made a difference if. I don't know. I hope the first person I see when I die is St. Joseph. So if I see him, I know everything's cool. And then I hope to see my father.
Why St. Joseph?
He's just, my dad had everything goes back to my father. My dad had a great devotion to St. Joseph. And I didn't like St. Joseph. I saw him as a very masculine, kind of tough guy, a carpenter. But there's a vulnerable side to St. Joseph, the caring, compassionate, strong, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I see that in the best men, and I saw that in my dad. And it's in the best priests, too. I've seen it. Just willing to lay their life down for those that they love.
That's what God said, that he treasures the humble, the most humble that there are.
Yes.
Last question. No, it's not a question. It's a fill in the blank. Name one thing you'd have our viewers do differently as a result of something they heard today.
Wow. If you know somebody, let's say, that's LGBT, look beyond that label, the label that society has put on them, maybe the church has put on them, that they've put on themselves, and just see that person you know, especially see them as the child that you knew before any of this happened, and just love them.
Oh, that's a really great place to end this show. My guest has been, as you can see right here, if you read it, Joseph Sciambra. He is the author of the book Disordered. Show him the book again.
Oh yeah, please order it. You can get it. The paperback copy is on my website, josephsciambra.com, and the Kindle version is available at Amazon.com.
Okay. You can't get the paper version on Amazon too? Paper at your website, Kindle?
Yeah,
okay.
Just at my website, yeah.
Yeah, so get the book Disordered. It's a beautiful book. This is my Catholic missionary friend, Joseph Sciambra. He is winning souls for Christ, and I praise God for the ministry he's planted. See, you're this quiet and tender guy who you're talking about temperament, but look at the strength he's planted in you. This tender, sensitive man who's got the strength to go out in the mission field, the no fear, and if you have it, you push past the fear of being laughed at or rejected, all for Christ. That's a strong man. That's a masculine man. That's a godly man. That's a Saint Joseph.
Thank you.
So I thank you.
That's about the best compliment you can give me.
Well, you've done it. You continue to work for the kingdom, and I have been honored to have you on my show. And if you ever have anything you want to talk about, write another book, give me a call. Let's do this again. I think my viewers would agree.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, well, I don't have to have you. You can see the website, josephsciambra.com. You can see the spelling right here on the screen. And of course, when this is downloaded, you can find this on my website where we've been live streaming. It'll be there forever. You can also go to, I'd actually like you to like my social media pages. I've got Instagram, Facebook. You're also watching this on Facebook Live right now. And I've started this new YouTube channel. I've got, praise God, the most amazing guests. And you're going to want to see who God has put on this show. I've had Michael Voris. I have Christine Watkins talking about her new book, The Testimony, The Warning, The Elimination of Conscience. Jesse Romero, he's worked with exorcists. I don't know if you know who he is, but a lot of big names. So we have to go off the air. And now when I tell you, if you can remember to say the word sunny side up, I don't want my viewers to hear that I'm just coding you there, but we're going to go off the air with that. So I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. You've been listening to Breakfast with Bacon. I want to remind you always to live your life. Can you say the words now?
Sunny side up.
Sunny side.